Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this morning I have been charged with the responsibility of opening batsman. And I know the expectation is that I will play a positive innings and score some runs today. But being first, Mr. Speaker, is nothing new to me. Mr. Speaker, America and Wallace will tell you that when they wanted to open their scorecard on making children, they had to give birth to Jeremiah and Norbert first for them to be able to continue. If you went to the training school and you were to speak to Miss Daisy or Jean-Bar 400 Jean-Bar or Miss Diana Funnis, who I refer to as Mom, or even Mr. Hamidi, and you ask them to recount their experience at the police training academy, and they would tell you, Mr. Speaker, that they could not associate me with no other word but first. And if you were to go to Mikud North, Mr. Speaker, and you were to ask the children, the men and the women of this constituency about what happened on July 26th, and it was a first, Mr. Speaker. We made history in Mikud North, Mr. Speaker. So batting first, Mr. Speaker, batting first this morning. I was told I was the first to take some t-shirts from an office, Mr. Speaker. And as I rise, Mr. Speaker, in this August chamber to make my contribution on the estimates of revenue and expenditure 2023-2024, I am reminded that the man behind this, the captain of this team, Mr. Speaker, and the member for Castries is his motto, and the motto for his team, and the motto for this government is putting people first. So I say all that to say, Mr. Speaker, that I am no stranger to being first. So as I gear up to face the first ball, I want to tell the opposition, and the timing is correct, Mr. Speaker. The timing is very correct to see the opposition walk in, that the conditions, they look good for batting today. And I say that on the premise of a primary surplus, which was recorded in the financial year 2022-2023. Don't take it for granted, Mr. Speaker, that the opposition did some serious damage to the pitch, which we inherited. In 2019-2020, they were poking holes in the ball, and they realized a primary deficit in excess of 24 million in the financial year 2020-2021. And then it started to rain COVID. But instead of the then captain and the member for Miku South indicating to the groundsman, Mr. Speaker, to cover up the pitch and wait for the pitch to dry up to resume play, no, he and his team continued to play in the rain, and like Peppa Pig, they were making muddy puddles, Mr. Speaker. And they realized a further primary deficit of in excess of $327 million in the financial year 2020-2021. But the crowd would not take it, they could not take it again, and ensured that the umpire raised his index finger one by one, Mr. Speaker, on July 26, and he put them out. Some were caught on the boundary in Soufre, some were bowled out in Mikud, some even run out in Grozili. But one had wisdom enough to retire hurt at the right time and not get out, but join the winning side. But that's cricket for you, Mr. Speaker. That's cricket for you. He had a review and he won. Mr. Speaker, I will now delve into this $1.55 billion budget to see how the people of Pralin, the people of Mamiku, Monrepo, Pasias, Loba, Lao, Noki Avenue, St. Mary, La Pointe, Marguerite, Escap, and the Mikud village, and by extension the people of St. Lucia, how can they benefit from this budget, from this estimates of revenue and expenditure that was presented yesterday by the member for Castries? Just because we know that the people of Mikud North, they have been patient for decades. And I say patient for decades as it relates to getting their fair share of the budget, especially their developmental component of the budget. And although we as parliamentarians we are never really satisfied as it relates to what we get for our constituency. But I trust in the prudential leadership style of the member for Castries East. And I encourage my constituents, Mr. Speaker, to do the same. Now, Mr. Speaker, I will start off with my role as Deputy Speaker. And one advantage of being Deputy Speaker in its current form, and not the Speaker, is the fact that I can stand here, Mr. Speaker, and make representation on behalf of the legislature. The Parliament continues to work hard day in and day out to ensure that the business of the Parliament is carried out with the utmost professionalism and to ensure the comfort of the men and women who occupy the chairs in this chamber. And over the past months, Mr. Speaker, we witnessed members walking in and out of the chamber, and some members visibly, yesterday I think I saw a member wearing some jacket under his jacket, Mr. Speaker. And he wore layers of clothing because of the coolness inside of this chamber. And we were not able to regulate the air conditioning units as we stood the risk of not working, of the air conditioners not working at all. And I'm happy today that I have seen an allocation of $261,000 on the capital expenditure on head 12 of page 25 of the estimates. And I know, Mr. Speaker, that this allocation will go a long way in facilitating the purchasing and installation of the air conditioning unit for this chamber and ensuring that the comfort of members in this chamber, Mr. Speaker, is met. Mr. Speaker, I think now is also an opportune time for members of the House Committee to meet and review some of the allocations for running the constituency offices, because members have always requested and expect their request to be fulfilled. And we ask ourselves, Mr. Speaker, is $5,000 a month sufficient to pay staff, to pay rent, to pay utilities, stationery, buy furniture? I know that the Parliament staff, Mr. Speaker, like the member of Castries East, have continued to exhibit great financial management skills, but I don't know for how much longer can they stretch the $5,000 that they're receiving. So I'm hopeful that when 2024-2025 estimates of revenue expenditure is prepared, the $1,020,000 that is being budgeted this year for constituency office support services, we can see an increase to that also. And I also see a slight reduction in the amount allocated for hosting and entertainment under the Parliament's budget. And I take that to mean that we may not be having as many sittings this year, Mr. Speaker. Or we may be resorting to eating a lot of ital bouillon. It seems nobody wants to eat the good food, so I see they remove a little bit from our hosting and entertainment allowance. Mr. Speaker, I now want to move on to, I have a personal interest in the safety and security of the St. Lucian citizenry. And I did so 13 years ago, and I do so even more now, Mr. Speaker, especially given the escalation in criminal activity over the past years, and more so the past couple of weeks. Mr. Speaker, whilst I noticed that there is an allocation of about $382,000 for the regulation of salaries of police constables and about $150,000 for the regularization of salaries of fire officers on the head 46, page 147, I could not help but flag the fact that I saw zero on the capital expenditure for fire service. Now, in times past, Mr. Speaker, I noticed that there was usually a $200,000 allocation on the capital expenditure for the fire service, and I don't know if there is any specific reason for that removal. But I did see a $3.175 million earmarked for purchasing of vehicles for the Grizzly Station, the Grizzly Fire Station, and for the George F. L. Charles Airport. Oh, that's the capital. Thank you. Well, Mr. Speaker, the fire service should be very happy this year to see that their capital from $200,000, I see $3.175 million. I know that the acting fire chief and his team will welcome this initiative, Mr. Speaker. And the process of finding a home for the fire service, where the fire service can actually call their home, Mr. Speaker, is still ongoing. And I'm happy that on the head 36, I saw a $50,000 allocation for consultancy services to determine the way forward for the construction of the fire headquarters. I'm also very happy at the Borderley Correctional Facility, that the Borderley Correctional Facility will be receiving $150,000 for the purchase of an additional vehicle to help with the transportation of prisoners, and purchase $231,000 for the purchase of specialized security equipment for the staff. And we all knew, Mr. Speaker, we saw the videos going viral, we all knew what the prison officers at Bodley had to endure, the conditions that they had to endure. We saw the hostility on the end of the inmates, and they remain resolute in their efforts. So I'm happy that today, as a government, we're able to provide them with an allocation for one more vehicle and $241,000 for specialized security equipment for staff. And it gets better for Bodley, Mr. Speaker, as Head 46, Head 21 would show that Bodley will be receiving $7.3 million for the removal and replacement of the chain link and the concrete fencing, the replacement of 133 cell locks, 237 unit security locks, and renovation to 116 inmate toilets. And we believe that, Mr. Speaker, crime cannot be fought with just the hard or draconian measures, but rather we have to adopt a multifaceted approach. And when we say that we want to see rehabilitation take place, we have to take steps, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that it actually takes place. So I'm happy that an allocation of $240,000, Mr. Speaker, was placed in this year's estimate to provide for the appointment of a doctor, a remedial teacher, a social worker, and a nurse at the Bodley Correctional Facility. I am pleased, Mr. Speaker, to see that on page 148, the allocation of $143,592 was made for the addition of 2 more probation officers for the probation and parole unit. And Mr. Speaker, we know that probation officers play a key role in the fight against crime by providing social inquiry reports to the parole board to help guide their decision-making process, and making an allocation to improve the current numbers by 2, I know will certainly go a long way, Mr. Speaker, on easing the burden of the current crop of probation officers. Mr. Speaker, I could not help but recognize the additional $710,000 in the budget under Head 46 for the addition of 15 more police constables to the major crime unit. And Mr. Speaker, the major crime unit, those of us here who know about policing would know that the major crime unit has the responsibility for dealing with the investigations of homicides and serious crimes. And from my own experience of being a police officer, I know that one of the issues plaguing this department, Mr. Speaker, is the lack of manpower. So to see this addition in the budget is really heartwarming, and it is the hope of this government that as we increase human resource, Mr. Speaker, as we increase the human resource capacity of the departments like the major crime unit, officers will now have an opportunity to give more attention to their matters, and hopefully we can see an improvement in the detection rate of homicides in St. Lucia. The major crime unit does not only receive a boost in human resource, but they also receive $165,000 for the purchase of equipment and software. Mr. Speaker, the drug unit, which is very dear to my heart, I think this is a place that I served the longest as a police officer. I'm happy to know that they're not forgotten, and the men and women of the drug unit, especially the Northern Division, they will be happy to know that there is an allocation in the estimates for this year to complete the refurbishment of the drug squad building in Latok. And I was still a police officer, Mr. Speaker, when the officers from the drug unit had to evacuate where they were being housed and take up home in a building which is not fit for purpose. And for various reasons, the building is not fit for purpose, and to date, they are still being housed in that unit. So I'm happy to see, Mr. Speaker, that there's an allocation for the refurbishment and the completion of the drug squad building in Latok. So, Mr. Speaker, a lot of emphasis will be placed this year on various agencies with responsibility to combat crime, and the Prime Minister made it very clear that this year is the year to fight crime, national security, and health. So a lot of emphasis will be placed on the departments and the agencies that have the responsibility to fight crime. And I applaud the efforts of the member for Castries East for taking serious steps, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that we deal with this crime situation head on. And I know that we will hear a lot more about the various initiatives that the government will embark upon this year in its effort to arrest crime when the government presents its policy statement next month. I now look at Micoud North, Mr. Speaker, and I go to Agriculture and Fisheries. And I see the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries has given me the nod. And I pray that he continues to give me the nod as I continue with my presentation. Mr. Speaker, Micoud North is known to have been an anchor in the economy of St. Lucia for its contribution to the economy in the heyday of the banana industry. Mr. Speaker, as this industry dwindled, so did the economic activity in Micoud North. And to date, we have not been able to rebound from that shock. But there is now an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to diversify and to regenerate some kind of economic activity in the constituency. So it is with that hope that I am excited to see under Head 41, Subhead 49, a provision of $300,000 for the enhancement of honey and CMOS production. Now, Mr. Speaker, if I'm being honest with you, I'd love to see an allocation a lot bigger than that, given the number of families in my constituency who depend solely and some very heavily on the production of CMOS to make a living. But I welcome, and I know that the CMOS farmers at Portui and Prowley also welcome the fact that some consideration was given to that particular sector. But, Minister for Agriculture, I trust that we can see a lot more money being pumped into this industry to give our CMOS and our apiculture farmers a real chance on the international front. Under that same head, I see an allocation of $1 million for the Banana Management Unit project. And I know some persons share the view that we should abandon the banana project altogether. But Mr. Speaker, the harsh reality is that demand for banana in the region and internationally is very high. And the unique taste of our bananas, of the bananas that Patch, Veno, Desi, they produce, Mr. Speaker, it cannot be compared to any other. So I'm hoping that the banana farmers in my region can benefit from this project and we can see increasing productivity as it relates to the banana industry. So I'm calling on the Minister with responsibility for agriculture and fisheries, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that when the disbursements are made, that the farmers in Portui, the farmers in Wayon, those in Piton, those in Maho, they too can be beneficiaries of the Banana Improvement Project, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I see under Subhead 37 of Head 41, Livestock Development, and there's an allocation for the relocation of the Boseju Agricultural Station. And the funds were approved, Mr. Speaker, to facilitate infrastructural work at the Vollet Agricultural Farm Station. And I know that quite a few of my constituents are direct beneficiaries of this project, and I look forward to seeing even more of my constituents, Mr. Speaker, benefiting from the project upon its completion. And I also notice there's, in the grants and components section of the estimates on the agriculture, Mr. Speaker, an allocation of $10,000 for farmers with disabilities. And in as much as, Mr. Speaker, I want to knock the table and say thank you and say, I think it's a start, Mr. Speaker, but I think that we can do a lot better. I see a growing number of persons with disability, Mr. Speaker, entering the farming arena, and we need to provide them with the proper support. We need to ensure that they're given the proper support and assistance and encourage them to become self-sustained individuals. But the current allocation does not provide a really big window, Mr. Speaker, for us to realize what we're trying to achieve under this program. It's a start. I agree it's a start, Mr. Speaker, but my hope is that as we continue, we're going to see an increase in the subvention or in the grant given to the farmers with disability, as this plays an integral role, Mr. Speaker. Key role, and I have farmers who call me, farmers who are involved under this program who call me, Mr. Speaker, and ask me to make representation on their behalf because they are involved in the it's already a strain to have a disability. It's a further strain to have a disability and be involved in the farming business, Mr. Speaker. And I think that if individuals are making that stride to help themselves, that we can do a little better in terms of assisting them. So I hope that the Minister of Agriculture can hear me. And Mr. Speaker, I spoke with a smile from the beginning of my presentation, but I now move to a very sore and sensitive topic, and I'm referring to Head 41, Subhead 27, and I know the Minister of Agriculture is well versed with this head, Fisheries Development. On the repairs, Mr. Speaker, I see an allocation to the tune of $711,300. And I see that these funds are earmarked for works in Dennery, procurement of ice making machine, and upgrade of existing vending area, repairs of mooring and anchorage of jetty, part to be used in Grozile. And it says repairs of general vending area and the slipway, part to be used in Castries, Mr. Speaker, to include electrical works, and in Soufrière, yes, in Soufrière as well, Mr. Speaker, for the repairs to the ice machine and the washroom facility. Mr. Speaker, we in Micoud, we do not have a slipway, we do not have an ice machine, we do not have a washroom facility. The one that we had has been decommissioned for over a decade. We do not have a vending area. We cannot anchor a jetty because we do not have one as yet, and I trust that the Prime Minister is going to ensure that we do get ours, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, we have to take into consideration that the people of Micoud North, a vast majority of the population in Micoud North, Mr. Speaker, they rely heavily on the fishing industry, Mr. Speaker, to earn a living. And I want to say that in Creole so that the fishermen by the sea in Micoud who are listening can hear, Mr. Speaker. Moi, l'année, l'argent, about ministry, about Department Fisheries, avec Ministry Agricole, $711,000. Avec moi, c'est là ça là pour servir pour faire travail d'ennerie. Yo ka joindre une machine pour faire la glace. Yo ka ranger côté à quoi yo ka vendre poisson. Moi de l'argent ça, yo ka servir à dedans pour ranger pour faire travail en gros îlet. Yo ka ranger côté à yo ka vendre poisson en gros îlet. Et yo ka côté là ne pas ka slipway ça yo ka servir pour aider c'est canotte la terre. Yo ka ranger ça tout. Moi là pour dépasser castru pour yo ranger bagay courant et que soufouyer pour yo ranger machine à café glace et puis washroom facility. Et puis moi pas ouais, moi voulais dire ministre agricole là moi pas ouais rien là by Micoud et puis nous pas ni côté pour nous vendre, nous pas ni washroom pour ces pêcheurs à servir, washroom là qui était là ça yo pas servi ça en haut 12 l'année, more than 12 years depuis yo pas servi ça encore. Nous pas ni un jetty et bien chez mais moi savent que premier ministre qui est pour lui dat nous joindre chez nous l'année ça là et puis moi voulais dire that me ga crier le ministre agricole, I'm begging you Minister of Agriculture, begging you Minister of the Responsibility for Fisheries, I'm saying please give some attention to the fishermen of Micoud. And I know that resources are limited, but I think that the fishermen of Micoud have exercised enough patience and that they have been waiting. And I would like Minister of the Responsibility for Fisheries to please move us in abeyance. Put our waiting to an end once and for all. So we can dire ministre pour ten hele nous a souffert assez Micoud pour la petite pani côté pour nous savons poisson nous pas nché et me voulais do pour pas faire nous hele et pour pas nous voulons ten nous nous ka hele et nous ça fait cuit qu'il faut assez from les nous fait cuit bola mais Micoud that nous ka ten denry nous ka make sure ten cuit a bo daito a denry. Mr. Speaker, I also noticed that there's an allocation of $10 million under Head 42 under Ministry of Commerce, Subhead 31, Enterprise Development. And this $10 million is a loan grant facility for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. And I see the member for Soufrière smiling, Mr. Speaker. And I think her smile means that she cannot wait for the people of Micoud North to benefit from this loan grant facility. And I want to encourage my small business owners in Micoud North, Mr. Speaker, and entrepreneurs alike to make optimum use of this facility. And as we strive to make micro, small, and medium-sized businesses in Micoud North more viable. I don't see the Minister for Infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, but I know that he's somewhere listening, and I notice that he has a huge envelope under Head 43. But I don't see much of that envelope assigned to Micoud North, Mr. Speaker. So, but I'm pleased though that under subhead 36, the Disaster Vulnerable Resilience and Recovery, I see an allocation of $200,000 for works on the Tumasi Bridge and $180,000 for the Pralem Main Bridge, Mr. Speaker. And as you know, these are the two bridges that demarcates our constituency. So these are the two bridges that makes Micoud North, the two bridges that makes Micoud North, Micoud North. And I'm happy that some attention will be given to these bridges, because I think during the independence relay, Mr. Speaker, the independence baton relay, I stood very close to the Tumase Bridge. I actually went onto the Tumase Bridge, and you can feel, I know that it's built in a way that it moves with the vehicles, Mr. Speaker. I don't know, the movement there is becoming a little frightening. So I'm happy to know that some attention will be given to the Tumase Bridge and also to the Prale Bridge. But I must say, Mr. Speaker, that there is an urgent need to address the road situation in La Pointe, in St. Marie, and the Wing Road from the Volet Junction to Antos in Micoud. And I'm hoping, yes, I said it, the St. Marie Road. St. Marie Road it needs urgent attention. And I said urgent how many times? I want Hansard to record me saying urgent on numerous occasions, because the St. Marie Road is in a deplorable condition, Mr. Speaker. And I'm fearful that very soon from now, maybe this year before we actually get to the rainy season, that this road might be impassable. So I'm calling on the Minister with responsibility for infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, to find it somewhere, find a little bit of breathing space to address at least one or two of these roads for us during this financial year, Mr. Speaker. On the housing and local government, Mr. Speaker, I'm a little excited. I don't have anything bad to say about housing and local government this time. Yeah. Last year, Mr. Speaker, around this time, I stood in this honorable house and I mentioned about the plans to expand the Monipo Cemetery. And due to the fact that the Monipo Cemetery has reached its capacity, and we have a similar case in Micoud as well, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to report here, Mr. Speaker, that the lands for the expansion have finally been acquired. And there is an allocation of $2.5 million, Mr. Speaker, on the Head 48, Department of Housing and Local Government, Sub-Head 65, Community Development Services, for the expansion of cemeteries across the island. So I'm asking the Minister with responsibility for housing and local government, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that Monipo, now that we've acquired the land, to ensure that Monipo and Micoud do get their fair share of the pie when distributing the resources. And the allocation of the National Housing Assistance Program of $5.25 million is also very encouraging to the people of Micoud North, Mr. Speaker. Only last week, I had a handing over of keys ceremony where I handed over keys to 7 individuals who became new homeowners in the constituency. So I applaud the ministry for this initiative and the Prime Minister for endorsing this initiative. And I look forward this year, Mr. Speaker, since I see the allocation looks double from what it was last year, I look forward to doubling my contribution in Micoud North in terms of the amount of houses that I can make available to the people in Micoud North during this financial year. Mr. Speaker, under Head 56, Department of Economic Development and Youth Economy, Sub-Head 41, National Infrastructure Development, number 79, Constituency Development Project, I see an allocation of $21.726 million. And Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to say that last year I was able to make optimum use of these resources, and I know that the people of Micoud North, they really felt the impact of the Constituency Development Project monies. I was able to do drains for the field in Fiadel, drains for the field in the bottom of La Pointe. We were able to do footpath in Vietnam. We were able to do drains near the cemetery. Yes, there's a Vietnam in Monipo. We were able to do drains for the... This Vietnam does not require RSS member for me, then enough. But we were able to do some drains, Mr. Speaker, near the cemetery in Monrepo. We're also able to do a few roads, concrete roads in the community, by Godfrey going down the road. Up in Prale, we were able to do some rehabilitative works in the road next to the field in Prale as well. In Norbert, Mr. Speaker, we're also able to do footpaths and drainage works there to ensure that the people living in these areas have access to their homes. We know that they had to endure muddy conditions for a prolonged period, Mr. Speaker. So I was happy that through the CDP, through my allocation under the CDP, that I was able to bring relief to quite a few people. And I know that there are more people within the constituency looking forward to benefiting from the CDP program. And I tell them that they can continue to look forward with hope as I know that I will also get a fair share of that CDP allocation that I see featuring on the Head 56 Department of Economic Development and Youth Economy. So, moi sava chay moun mikou mon repos yo chay ane bagay yo ka créer constituency development project et puis ça c'est l'argent ou ka servi pour faire petit projet, petit footpath, petit canal constituency et puis commune et puis moi j'ai servi l'argent ça là l'année passée pour moi faire footpath pour aller nous faire chimère pour aller nous faire chimère la pointe nous faire canal pour fil fiadel nous faire canal pour fil fond la pointe nous faire footpath en long bas canal là nous aider un chay ces femmes à souchiméo ces femmes ça dit nous bailler chay matériaux pour mettre à souchiméo même si nous pas ça concrete chimère mais nous ça faire ça avec rehabilitative works pour tout pour aller Simos facture so passer là à présent au cas c'est highway so mon cas passe like moi veut dire that moi ka garder pour l'année ça moi ka garder pour faire plus travail et puis les moyens allocation moi from CDP n'a garder pour faire chay plus travail by Mikounov et puis moi ça là n'a des monde qui dit yo te brisé 10 yo te brisé date nous pas ça fait toute bagarre de l'année mais l'année ça nous pour prioritize qui ça nous ka fait nous pour ça qui brisé mon qui brisé plus obligé ni pour jeune avant so moi veut dire c'est ni la patience mais l'année ça nous ca continuer puis projet ça et puis moi ouais ça ca feature de budget là that nous ca continuer ca une allocation en bas Ministry Economic Development nous ca continuer une allocation nous ca continuer servir allocation ça pour nous ça fait travail de la community nous. Mr. Speaker, I have to also speak of the under the Ministry of Tourism community tourism, Mr. Speaker. And I see the member for Castries South raising his head. And last year I remember making a case here for Mikounov to be one of the first beneficiaries of when this bill was introduced, so Mikounov to be one of the first beneficiaries of the community tourism project. And Mr. Speaker, I'm happy to say that Mikounov are doing their part in terms of taking the steps to ensure that we become beneficiaries of this project. And what I envisage for Miku and for Prale, Mr. Speaker, is a seamless experience similar to what exists right now at Soufre with the Hotel Chocolat and the chocolate experience. So the idea is that tourists would now be able to stop in Prale, Mr. Speaker, and would be able to go onto a kayak or boat, take a tour, see the CMOS farm, see how CMOS is being produced, Mr. Speaker, go to a drying plant, and then go to a store area or vending area where you would be able to buy your CMOS gel, your CMOS caps, your CMOS shirts, CMOS powders, CMOS soaps, and everything made of CMOS. So we've already, I know that we've already submitted to the Ministry of Tourism, and we're looking forward to seeing that our submission, we're hoping that is going to be accepted and funded, and hopefully very soon that we can actually see the CMOS experience not be mentioned as a CMOS experience just in this house, but when you pass down the bay that you can actually see a tangible CMOS experience that you can go to and enjoy what Prale has to offer. And I have to say, Mr. Speaker, I on the record to say that the best CMOS in St. Lucia comes from Mikud North. And the member for Vieux-Fort North may want to say otherwise, but the best CMOS in St. Lucia, and I think the last time I was on Anukoze, Michael Gasper agreed that the best CMOS comes from Mikud North. So I'm looking forward to being a beneficiary of the community tourism initiative and seeing what we're going to get under the under the Ministry of Tourism. Youth and Sports, Mr. Speaker, we know what Mikunov has done in terms of youth and sports. We produce some of the best cricketers in St. Lucia, Mr. Speaker. We speak of the Walters, we speak of Gary Maffrin, we speak of Sean Neal, Edward, Mr. Speaker, an upcoming talent. And we continue to produce, Mr. Speaker. Those of you remember the Dream 11, remember Monrepo made the Dream 11 look like there was no competitors there for us, Mr. Speaker. And it is on that premise, Mr. Speaker, that I have approached the Minister with responsibility for youth and sports, and I look forward to the Wen playing field, Mr. Speaker. The Wen playing field is one of the biggest fields. Most people who play cricket in St. Lucia, everyone who played cricket in St. Lucia, anyone who played cricket at a certain level had to go to the Wen facility. If you've not been to the Wen facility, then you've just been playing backyard cricket, Mr. Speaker. So it is on that premise that I've gone to the Minister with responsibility for youth and sports, Mr. Speaker, and I know that he made the pronouncements elsewhere, but I'm happy to say that we're looking forward in Micoud North to seeing a pavilion being placed at the Wayne playing field, to see proper lighting being placed at the Wayne playing field, proper concessionary areas, sitting areas, vending areas for the people of Micoud North. We would like to see people come to Wayne playing facility and enjoy cricket for what it is. I think for too long the people that have been there have had to endure. When it rains, we have to run. Even the washroom facility, we've not had one for a long time, and even the one that we have because of the distance that it is. So I'm looking forward to this piece of investment. Yes, we had makeshift stands, Mr. Speaker. The Grassroots Youth and Sports Club has used galvanized and a few poles, Mr. Speaker, to make their own home at the Wayne playing field, and I think it is time now, it is opportune for us to upgrade the facility and ensure that we can see more young talent coming out of the Wayne facility, and we know what Monripo can offer, what Micoud can offer in terms of cricket. So I look forward to the Wayne playing facility, the improvement of the Wayne playing facility this year. I'm hoping that the member for Castries North was listening when I made my mention of the St. Mary Road, Mr. Speaker, so I may have to say it again that I want him to watch me when I'm asking for the roads, Mr. Speaker. The Lapointe Road, the St. Mary Road, the Vollet Road, the Vollet Wing Road that goes back to Anto, Mr. Speaker. These roads have been in deplorable condition, and I'm hoping, I don't see them reflecting anywhere in this year's budget, Mr. Speaker, but I'm hoping that the member for Castries North and Minister for Infrastructure find some breathing space somewhere within that big envelope, Mr. Speaker. It can be in the peel of the envelope. Just find a little space for Micoud, to include Micoud, and to be able to give us at least we'll not ask for all free, but if you're going to give us 66% is a pass member. So if you give us the 2, we'll accept it. So we're asking for at least 2 of these roads to be repaired this year, in this financial year. And I'm happy that the member has agreed to go and visit my roads later. This is very encouraging for me, Mr. Speaker. And I know that when he sees it for himself, that there's no way that he's not going to break and he's not going to assist us with at least 2 of the roads, especially the St. Mary Road. Especially the St. Mary Road, Mr. Speaker. I will not repeat what I heard the member for Chozel said, Mr. Speaker. For I may be cautioned if I decide to go down that route. But Mr. Speaker, in closing, I want to give my full support to the estimates on revenue and expenditure. And I want to say that I know the batsmen coming after me. They're in for long innings. And the opposition, I know, Mr. Speaker, might bowl a Pipindu here and there. But we're guaranteed that these Pipindus that they're going to go, and if they realize that the Pipindu taking too much licks, Mr. Speaker, they may resort to chucking the ball. But I hope he says a full toss, and you know what happens to full toss. We hit that for 6. Yeah. We hit that for 6. So, Mr. Speaker, I know that the opposition will come in and bowl a few Pipindus, but as I tell you, there is not even enough opposition for these Pipindus to pass, and the batting lineup is long, and I know that the bowlers may become very weary. They may become tired. However, I thank the member for Castries East, Mr. Speaker, for ensuring that he prepared a very good batting surface for us as colleague parliamentarians. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I want to say thank you. And I want to thank, Mr. Speaker, the people of Micoud North, Mr. Speaker. I want to say a special thank you to the people of Micoud North for giving me the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to be able to represent them in this honorable house, Mr. Speaker. The journey has not been the easiest, Mr. Speaker. It has been a learning curve for me, but with the support of my friends in the constituency, with the support of my colleague parliamentarians, Mr. Speaker, it has really been a refreshing one. And I thank my colleague parliamentarians for giving me the big brother experience, the hand-holding experience that they've given me through this journey. And I look forward to many more budgets to come in this honorable house. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.